So if you're just tuning in about, well, no, I guess we should start talking here pretty quick because we've got so much to talk about. I'm just delighted to have Becky Betts with us today. Becky's been with Providence for 29 years and has spent most of her time with Providence as a bedside nurse and a case manager. But in 2019, she left the hospital to build Providence's Population Health Southeast Division. So Becky gave me this great quote from Gandhi: "The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members." And that's kind of at the heart of what we're going to talk about tonight. This leader of ours, Becky, is deeply invested in our community, and she says she hasn't met a board that she hasn't gladly served or a worthy cause that she wasn't happy to champion. Can't wait to hear what she has to tell us about population health and about a COVID response in our community, and especially how we serve the most vulnerable in our midst. Just a couple of more notes about Becky. She's currently pursuing her doctorate of nursing practice and population health at Washington State University with the long-term goal to radically change healthcare systems. So I'm so excited, and we'll have to have you back to present your dissertation to us. We'd be so excited. Hopefully,
sure, yeah.
Maybe we can sign up for that now.
Yeah.
And Becky and her husband Bob have raised 4 kids who have grown into kind and compassionate grown-ups, and that's her greatest achievement, she says. We're going to hear about some of her other work to nurture compassion and health in our community today. Before I turn it over to Becky Betts, I want to present my colleague and Whitman Senior sociology major, right? Zidane Gallant-Laporte. I'm going to turn the mic over to you for a second. Zidane, hi.
Hello, everyone. It's so lovely to see some familiar faces or familiar names more so. My name is Zidane, as Leaves. I am a senior at Whitman, and I also have the pleasure of serving as the Neighborhood Engagement Programs Coordinator for the City of Walla Walla. And I'm so grateful to be partnering with Leave to make this possible and to have Becky here with us tonight. This is a topic close to my own heart and probably on a lot of our minds. So I'm gonna give it back so that Becky can take the floor and educate us on some radical ideas for our healthcare systems.
Wonderful. Well, take it away, Becky.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Is my volume all right? Awesome. Before I go off video and turn it over to PowerPoint, I really want to thank you. I love public speaking, and I love talking passionately about what I care most about, and it certainly is population health. I hope that everybody gets a chance sometime in their life to do what they feel like they were born to do, and certainly I am so lucky that my professional and personal passions completely align at the moment. I feel like I came out of utero to do exactly what I'm doing with the people that I'm doing it with. So I feel incredibly fortunate. I want to thank Liv and Zidane and Chuck and certainly Pioneer Methodist for the warm invitation tonight on this cold December evening. I would rather be no place else. So without further ado, I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to share my screen. And you're going to have to tell me whoops. Here's where the tech gets weird, right? Okay, what do you see, Liv?
Looks great to me. I can see it.
Okay. Still look good?
No, it vanished for some reason.
No, it's vanished. How about now? Good. All right. So I think the first question out of the gate, what the heck is population health? And my question back to you, what isn't population health? When I was asked to start up this department and build it from the ground up, I really got a blank slate, and it's been largely driven by my imagination and creativity of my team, and to identify needs and pivot with really rapid innovation, and that has been exciting and terrifying all at once. I love this quote by Father Michael Roger, and it states that as hospitals nationwide face increasing pressure to care for complex patient populations, strategy that goes beyond the hospital walls isn't optional, it's a necessity. And that really resonates with me because as a healthcare system, it doesn't make a lot of sense for people. Like, why are we out in the community? Why are we rounding at the sleep center? Why do we care what's happening at the YWCA? Well, we care an awful lot because those are our patients, and it should matter for us as a community because we need to all be vested in these patient populations. So here's the fancy dancy definition, and I'll just summarize it in a nutshell. Population health reflects a mission and vision that health really is a human right, that for our communities to thrive, we really need to focus on the physical, the mental, and social well-being of the populations we serve. And that means outside hospitals, outside clinics. It means where people live. And it's a relatively new division of Providence St. Joseph Health. It started about 3 years ago in the healthcare system. And again, like Liv said, we started the department in summer of 2019. And I am the luckiest person in the world that I get to share my days with a team of 4 brilliant nurses, a social worker, a pharmacist, and 2 community health workers, and soon to be a promotores de salud, a small but mighty dedicated team dedicated to change the trajectory of lives and healthcare in our valley. I just love Desmond Tutu, one of South Africa's most well-known human rights activists. He won the 1984 Nobel Peace Prize for his effort in resolving and ending apartheid. This quote has great significance, and I read, "There comes a point where we need to stop pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in." If I could invite you all just to use your imagination right now and think of that Walla Walla River dumping into the mighty Columbia, that's at Wallula Gap. And imagine for a moment if it were treacherous and all day long in our healthcare system, we're pulling people out of Wallula Gap. We pull them out, we dry them off, we send them on their way. It's pretty defeating when in a few short weeks or even days later, we're pulling out the same people out of the same spot in the same river over and over and over again. This is insanity, right? This is the most costly spot in terms of healthcare expenditure and human suffering. And you cannot fix things among this chaos in the waves and turbulence of water. At some point, shouldn't somebody be walking up that riverbank and figuring out where these people are falling in? To me, that is the esprit de corps of population health. We're thinking about all those upstream approaches, partnering with our community to care for those in need. My dear friend Francis Quaddle told me last fall, the time of tinkering around the edges is done. We need to do something pretty radical. I'm sure all of you are familiar by now social determinants of health. They have got a lot of traction in the press. We hear a lot about them. And those are the conditions on which people are born, grow, live, work, age, and shape that health. And it has to do with housing and food and economics and interpersonal and education. And really what blew my mind is that 2016 Robert Wood Johnson study that determined social determinants of health made up 80% of our health outcomes. So a mere 20% of our health is actually linked to clinical or genetics. The rest of it is where we live, the size of our paycheck, what we put in our mouth, where we go to school, what our zip code is. So all of these things are driving health equity. Perhaps in a healthcare system, in a community, we ought to put more focus on these things. Speaking of health equity, we cannot have a social determinant conversation without talking about it. I really like this slide. For decades, I thought the pursuit of equality was enough. But newsflash, we have failed. We have failed big time with equality. It really is about health equity, giving people the tool. Not everybody needs the same thing. Everybody needs different things to achieve the same. So this is just a great illustration of that. And perhaps the worst of all forms of inequality and injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and the most inhumane. And of course, this is Martin Luther King. Back in 1966, And I had thought by 2020 we would be further involved, but COVID has shown a very bright light in some very dark and ugly places, and including our own reflections. If there is one takeaway from the last 9 months in relation to this pandemic, it is that health equity matters. We have huge disparities between our neighborhoods and our skin colors and our occupation, and that hurts my heart. Here's just some statistics I pulled out just in the last month. This was pretty shocking. 26 to 36 year reduced life expectancy for those experiencing homelessness. 66% of food insecure households choose between paying for food and medical care. There's a 2.13 times greater mortality if you're on Medicaid versus private insurance. 26% increased risk in mortality from loneliness, and a 9-year gap in life expectancy for those without a high school diploma versus a college graduate. That, my friends, that is an example of inequities. Then we have coronavirus. Just as we were getting the party started with population health and real traction with some exciting initiative, COVID hit our community. Can you believe 291 days ago is when our first case came to Walla Walla? Our world has just been flopped up and turned upside down since. We had to quickly pivot as a population health department and develop a robust COVID response in partnership with our not only Providence healthcare system, but our other healthcare partners, Walla Walla Clinic, Family Medical Center, and our community. Lives were at stake in a really scary time, and a time where information was changing on a dime every other day. Information was coming out that was differing and contradictory. So we started risk stratifying what were the most worrisome populations we were concerned about, and pretty quickly it was the homeless and unsheltered, and later in the summer, our Latinx communities. We made it a top priority to laser focus on their needs. Tonight, I will spend most of my next couple slides talking about our homeless response in our conjunction with our community partners. It was March 27th. I will never forget the day where all 4 shelters converted to 24/7 operations. This was not an easy ask, not an easy feat. They did so without complaint, and I still marvel at what a fantastic job our shelters have done. We have a weekly Friday Zoom call between the county and healthcare systems and all of our shelters and the comprehensive mental health and the VA. And what has turned into be a call of necessity, kind of troubleshooting, how are you doing on PPE? Do you have any sick people? Has transcended to an opportunity to really case conference and think about the care that we're delivering and ideas that will long last COVID, I'm certain. I think our partnerships have never been stronger. We've also started weekly rounding. Providence has a presence, as well as other agencies at the homeless shelters, going to them. The idea is we want to mitigate that risk. We want to reduce the exposure out in the community. So the more services we can provide at the shelters, the better we are. That includes testing at the shelters and doing symptom management at the shelters. So really thinking about ways we can keep people on site. Giving lots of COVID education and support. And this includes meals and food, anything that we can do. And this is huge cooperation with the county and generous dollars from our Department of Commerce and our Department of Health. And lastly, the creation of the Southgate Isolation and Quarantine Shelter, which is a relatively new development. We currently have 2 guests in residence. For those community members that are not aware of this is for you. This is really a gift that's available to anybody. The old General Hospital, which is our Southgate campus, we have a 400-unit wing that it has 27 beds that is available to our community for people that need to go if they need isolation and quarantine. This is a highly contagious disease, and we need to keep households apart that are infectious or people that don't have anywhere to go. You can imagine the devastation COVID would play out in congregate living situations such as the loft or the YWCA. So we need a place that we can quickly move people off shelter sites. So at the first part of November, the quarantine shelter went live. The shelter providers, again, my hat's off to them. I am humbled to work with them. They are committed, they are informed, they are servant leaders, and I am honored every day that they take my call. Let's talk about some local statistics for our homeless populations. Just our own Providence internal data. We're pretty rich with data. We know what population health has miles and miles and miles and loads of data on patient populations. So what I can share with you this evening is for our populations, for our homeless populations, we know they have the highest rate for all mental health and substance use metrics. They have, in the last 2 years, our homeless patients and those with housing instability have the highest rates of chronic conditions, of hypertension, and they have the lowest rates of having a provider, so no doctor. And they have the highest mortality rates locally, which really eats away at life expectancy. I think that this is all attributed to, trust issues. They've been burnt by systems that, keep them at bay. So that's why we see heavier downstream costs. So when I talk about upstream and downstream, metaphorically, we can talk about a river, but I'm also thinking about getting upstream. That's intervening when children are little. You think about ACEs and Terry Barilla's work with childhood trauma. That's why it's really important to get little people and intervene in teaching resilience early, because then the downstream, when they become older and older and older, it becomes more expensive in human treasure and trove. I also want to remind you, this is also near and dear to my heart, mental health and substance use are neurobiological diseases. They are chronic. They can be treated. They are not moral failings. They are diseases like other chronic diseases, like diabetes and COPD. Something that has been weighing really heavy on my mind, particularly this week after the Union Bulletin article on Monday, and I know that has been really weighing on the minds of those that work with persons experiencing homelessness, is that language really holds a lot of weight. Words matter. Words hold a lot of trauma. And when we use language like bad actors, that just perpetuates stereotypes and a cycle of pain. And I've never met a person experiencing homelessness that has not had a name. So, let's just remember that. It's Mr. Jones who's experiencing homelessness. Mr. Jones has a story. Mr. Jones has a life. Mr. Jones most likely has a story that would probably curl your toes, because we've heard him. And rather than that homeless man, Mr. Jones is so much more than his current situation. So my pop health team has got to know many of these clients, their childhood trauma, their abuse. And the first person language matters in order to maintain an environment of dignity and respect and hope. I really want to highlight a community health worker program that we launched in April, kind of right when COVID was hitting. We hired 2 community health workers. This was also a first for Providence. We have some skin in the game. We have boots on the ground. This is a program that I'm tremendously proud of. This is the first in the Washington, Montana, Providence footprint. What is a community health worker, and why are you going to see them out in the community, and why is it really important to me as a manager of population health that they're interfacing with our homeless and our vulnerable and your community agencies, and why do I want you to know them by name? Because they are game changers. This is what's going to change our healthcare system. A community health worker is a member of the community, but they reach patients where they live, where they eat, where they play, where they worship. Again, some bells should be going off in your head right now. Those are the social determinants. So where I couldn't reach them as a bedside nurse in the hospital, because I only had them for a couple days, I could not fix homelessness. I could not fix poverty. I could not fill out a housing application. But you know what? Our community health workers can. They are our boots on the ground. They're caregivers that aren't tethered to a sterile clinic or hospital. These are some success stories. They onboarded in April, they hit the ground running in June. And I have permission to share these stories. I did change names, but I want to share this with you this evening because I think it's pretty mind-blowing. Emma, 40-year-old alcoholic with a seizure disorder, falls, history of trauma, rape, and abuse. 25 emergency department visits year to date. This is our taxpayer dollars. This is expensive. This is the most expensive place to get care. She has a dog, a little dog named Roscoe. August was the crescendo. She had 8 visits in the ED during August. Our community health worker, met her, befriended her, really was kind to that little dog, and she just completed a 30-day inpatient treatment. And our community health worker attends some AA meetings with her, and she has not had an emergency room visit since. Jay, 31 year old, multiple ED visits, blood sugars over, this is a typo, over 500, super high blood sugars. No doctor, no medicine, homeless, no shoes, living with mental health and substance use. Started with a cup of coffee and a pair of shoes. In 1 week, our community health worker has helped find a provider, medication, diabetic supplies, securing an essential bed to start focusing on behavioral health. Mary, unmanaged heart failure. CHW entered her life. Gently encouraged her to engage in providers. Mitigated the tug of war. I think we're all familiar with that. You don't want to go to the doctor because you haven't done everything you're supposed to do. Well, Mary wasn't adhering to her medicines because she was afraid she's going to lose her job. She couldn't take all the diuretics the provider prescribed her because she was always getting up to going to the bathroom and her employment was in jeopardy. So she just kind of quit going to her doctor because she wasn't taking her meds, and it was that vicious cycle of not doing what you should be doing. So the community health work attended the appointment with her and empowered her to share with her provider really what was happening, made some powerful changes. They switched her medication regime. She lost that 60 pounds of water weight, hooked her up with our heart failure navigator nurse. She's driving again, and she's really, happiness is oozing from every pore, she tells us. Ray, 26 years old, just life was ready to give up on him. Our therapy referred him and said, this is futile until he deals with his mental health. He's not engaging in therapy. He's disheveled. He's antisocial. This is someone who's kind of headed for being a kind of a quote nobody. The root issue is his mom was dying. They were very codependent, and he just needed a friend. He needed a healing, authentic relationship. He needed somebody to really invest some time in him. Community health worker developed a rapport, helped him with some life skills, took him to the grocery store, and when his mom died, she was there to take his call. And finally, John, wow, a real mess. Homeless, self-saboteur, diabetic, 19 emergency room visits between January and June. Again, incredibly costly to our healthcare system. Since a community health worker entered his life in June, his visits have decreased to 3. And it was really Magic the Gathering cards that they sat down and played together, and he's on his way to stable housing. I share these stories because not one of them involved any interface with a provider or a nurse or a clinic or an ED. It was all rooted in relationships and kindness, a pair of shoes, a dog biscuit, a Magic the Gathering cards. Unusual things when we think about healthcare, but it's really enthusiastic, committed, caring individuals that might just change the trajectory of healthcare. So I'm proud of our community health workers. I'm proud of the work they're doing with your agencies and our community providers. And in my 30 years in healthcare, it's really unbelievable. So just on the heels of hiring them, we get this bulletin from the Health Affairs that basically the Department of Homeland Security had a memorandum calling community health workers critical infrastructure in the COVID-19 pandemic because they are boots on the ground. They were literally saving thousands of lives because they were able to engage in community-based strategies to protect vulnerable populations during the pandemic. And that's exactly what they have been doing. They delivering thermometers and oximeters to doorsteps. I know our wonderful food banks, our Salvation Army and BMAC, whose volumes and need has increased exponentially during this pandemic. Our community health workers deliver food boxes 2 to 3 to 4 a day on the doorsteps of Walla, because these are people we've asked to stay in isolation and quarantine. We have told them to stay at home. Well, we darn better meet their care coordination needs. So we partner really closely with the Department of Health. Our community health workers bring art kits. So we've partnered with Augusta Sparks Farnham and Art Walla and the Providence Foundation created these beautiful first aid art kits, which really was a tool to think about keeping occupied during isolation and quarantine. Remember, we had a loneliness epidemic, and then we have this pandemic on top of it. It's an incredibly lonely time for people. So these art kits provide diversion and an activity to really get in touch with a creative side. So I'm forever grateful for that partnership. But our community health workers are a means to get those art kits in the hands of people that need them. So I see their work in three buckets. They're working on health equity and the Promotores de Salud, which is going to be our bicultural, bilingual community health worker. And more than ever, we need boots on the ground. Folks, this is heavy lifting. I am not here to say that Providence can do it alone. I'm not saying that Providence wants to lead. I'm not saying that we are here to swoop up or get in anybody's lane. I am saying that we need to do it together. The benefits of community partnerships are many. Again, another wonderful African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go farther, go together. That certainly has been a lesson I have learned in the last 10 months in Neon during COVID. Resources go farther, unique skill sets. I love that I can call anybody in the community and ask them a question or run a wild idea, and they are willing to listen. Increase community awareness around issues, provide framework and stabilization for sustainability. I don't want any of this to go away. I don't want the genie to go back in the bottle. Too much work has been done. And it's just an opportunity to see and understand issues from a different perspective. All the time we're forming collaborations, conversations, MOUs, BAAs, unique and creative. It's amazing time, and magic has occurred. I lifted this from my friend Heather Rodriguez's Facebook page. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's yours, Heather. I don't know if you wrote it or somebody else wrote it, but it really fits tonight's theme. We are not in the same boat. We are not all in the same boat. We are in the same storm. Some have yachts, some have canoes, and some are just drowning. Be kind and help whoever you can. And remember, this speaks to equality. Remember Wallula Junction? So just help whoever you can. And maybe someday we're just not continuing to pull people out of a river where this can be our future. I am hopeful. And I know this is a really dark December on top of a very long, arduous year. I lost 2 friends this week. I lost one to COVID and one unexpectedly of cardiac arrest. It's been an awful year, but I still feel hopeful. I really feel hopeful because, as I mentioned, language matters, and I'm a fervent student of design thinking. I like to explore what works, but then take it a step further to explore what wows. I like appreciative inquiry. Instead of looking at what's wrong with the picture, what is right with that picture. So back to our, excuse me for the rapid switch. I just thought of this. So what is wrong with this picture? A lot of people can look, but what is right? So I see a man that's deeply attached to the dog. So his strength is the dog. So I can leverage a relationship with the dog. Where can we go with the dog? On the right side, well, at least they have the shelter of the car. The car is a strength. So instead of what's wrong with the picture, what is right with the picture? Okay, I'm taking you on a speed drive again. And finally, so again, and also not only that is, but, you know, instead of what is a matter with the person, what matters to the person. So in closing, I am just a true believer in the power of relationships and a partner and with one another. And finally, in the powerful words of my idol, Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So I thank you for your attention. I would be happy to take any questions or hear your wild ideas. I'm always up for a good idea. I'll pass it back to you, Liv.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. So let's stop the share here. And here we are again. Hello. Hello, friends. For those of you who joined us, I'm just a little bit late. We're here with Becky Betts, who's the program manager for population health for Providence Medical Group. And you can't see her right now, but Zidane Gallant-Laporte, who's the neighborhood engagement coordinator for the city of Walla Walla. And what we're going to do next is we're going to take some time for Q&A. And we would just love your questions, whatever is bubbling up for you. It could be something from the presentation, but it could also be a question about our community's health. It could be about this current pandemic that we're in. Send us your questions. We'll give ourselves a couple of minutes to formulate these, and please put them in the chat here down at the bottom of your screen. There's a little chat bubble. Click on that, send your questions to us, and we'll gather them together. Becky is eager to take your questions, so come up with some good ones for her, and we'll continue the conversation that way so it becomes more of a dialogue. And thank you, Becky, for that wonderful presentation. So much to talk about.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll just take a couple of minutes to gather our thoughts, friends. I'll do the same. Great questions coming in, friends. Keep it up. Wonderful questions. Let's get started. Becky, can you see any of these? I'm gonna toss them to you. Okay, so our first one comes from Brittany, and she's wondering how the average layperson can support these efforts. And that's akin to a question that our senior pastor, Julie Reinholtz, posed, which is, how can nonprofits like churches be helpful? So how can the individual help with these efforts? How can nonprofits help?
Oh, great question. So many ideas. My ask is first, again, the power of language. So when you see things, try to figure out, try to reframe and think what's right with the picture, what's what could we do? Think of the person as a person. Just educate the public as much as they can that it is a person there. It's a person with a life and a story. I think that probably every, Walla Walla is rich in nonprofits, but I think everyone could always use a helpful hand. I love volunteers, and I think that we can use them in so many creative ways. And don't hold ideas back. I think we can get caught in silos. So if somebody has an idea that you've heard about on NPR or you read about in a paper or you've seen on TV, this is the time, folks. This is, I always tease that it's like whack-a-mole during COVID. So many regulations and rules have just gone by the wayside as we've desperately tried to save lives and stay one step ahead of this pandemic. So this is a time to be really novel. So if you have something that you think you might want to try on for size, please come forward. This is the time to see if it works. But I think just largely speak up, continue to be that thoughtful, committed citizen, and speak up and be kind. It sounds so simplistic, but that's really what it is. It's pretty simple.
So when we see people in need, we're talking about people who are missing who don't have those basic needs met. People who are really struggling. We approach our neighbors as other human beings. So
other human beings, yes. And the stories that continue to emerge from my team as they start to bubble forward. The clients we work with are almost uncomfortable. They haven't felt nice. They haven't felt kindness. It's almost an uncomfortable feeling. And it's one step forward, two steps back, one step forward, three steps back. But continue to show up. Continue to say, I'm here for you. I care about you. It's not always easy, but I got you. And it's continuing to show up.
Showing up looks really different in this time of COVID for a lot of us, but
it does.
I need to remember that challenge. And that's been a big part of our community conversation these days, is how do we build more empathy and how do we make this our community more compassionate? We've seen so much division, and just starting with your neighbor and that person who's in need right next to you, and thinking deeply about them and empathetically, and coming up with creative solutions. That's good for individuals and for nonprofits, right?
Yes, and about as far as the faith communities, it's such a rich treasure in the faith communities, and I know many have stepped forward as far as providing meals and lunches and soups and all sorts of things. Something that just continues to burn at my soul, and I don't know if it exists, but I sure think it should, and I think of the utility it would have, is to bring back parish nursing, and I would love to organize a force of parish nurses of retired. There's so many opportunities to deploy parish nurses or in some sort of volunteer. There's never enough. There is so much need, and so just keep that in the forefront too.
When you were talking about community health workers networking with churches, that really made me think of that. Do you want to say a little word about parish nursing to folks who might not be familiar with the concept?
Yeah, I don't know enough about it other than it's a concept. If it, it's just builds on that community health worker who is a trusted member of the community. So I think, to me, what a parish nurse would be is somebody that is in your congregation who has a background of nursing or healthcare that could be an extended member of that community. What we are finding more and more and more, particularly in light of COVID and in our Latinx communities, is we need trusted voices. It's hard. Healthcare is not necessarily trusted. It's been lumped together as a government entity. There is lots of suspicion. There's lots of disinformation out right now. And we need to channel positive messaging through trusted voices. So I think the power of a parish nurse, somebody that's in the congregation that is a trusted, loved, beloved member of the community, how much power that would help to move the healthcare needle forward.
Absolutely. It might be a little more comforting if it's someone next to you in the pews at church or at synagogue or temple, and you
Yeah.
just, that's a person you go to talk about your blood pressure. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if there's question about vaccine, but that is a little worrisome. There are surveys going out in our own community in different sectors, and right now the survey is coming about 50-50 people that are willing to take the vaccine. That's not going to get us near herd immunity. Not at all. So we need to do better. So if people have some mistrust in the vaccine, that exactly would be a utilization for a parish nurse or community health worker, or it's going to take more than just a healthcare system or a population health department or a lead or volunteer at a homeless shelter. It's going to be people that are trusted members of communities.
Absolutely. And that ties into a couple of questions that we have about vaccines. The first comes from Chuck, which is what would be good for us to know about vaccines, which are hopefully coming soon. And the second from Wendy, who just wants to know a little bit about the vaccine rollout. And a question from Wendy about, won't it be a daunting task to vaccinate the homeless population, folks who move around more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, really good questions. And again, really out of the box thinking right now. There is vaccine task force meeting nearly every day. Things are moving so fast. I do fully expect the FDA is going to approve the Pfizer COVID vaccine when they meet on December 10th. I expect it in our community next week and rolling out to vaccinate healthcare providers. Is coming quickly. We'll be getting the huge freezer either Friday or Monday. So it's coming, and I will have once the opportunity comes, I will be the first to roll up my sleeve as soon as it is offered. Yeah, it's going to be consuming, but we're up for the challenge. And as far as the homeless shelters, it's that relationship building. An example of that is tomorrow, the health department, the public health nurse and I are going out to the sleep center. We're going out with flu vaccines and hot water bottles and popcorn. So again, build on the relationships, offer the flu vaccine, talk why it's important, but you're again planting the seeds of why not only is it an important year to get a flu vaccine, but start to socialize the idea of the COVID vaccine. And that will be followed by Thursday, Christian Aid Center at noon. So we've already kind of toured the homeless shelters once with the flu vaccine, and the vaccination rates are up throughout all of the shelters. And I have to believe that's, again, the great job that our shelters are doing, and the fact that we're taking really good care of the people there. It will be a daunting task, but again, Wendy, we're up for it. And, just that, the CDC has rolled out the very specific tier. In that first tier will be healthcare workers, followed by nursing home residents. And then right behind in tier 1B is our congregate populations, which are our homeless shelters. So in pretty rapid fashion, I would expect by January and February, we will have all those populations vaccinated.
Oh, wonderful. Well, a bit of good news.
Yes.
For a long year. Okay, a question from Dorothy. How are community health workers funded? We're jumping around here a little bit, but.
No, that's a wonderful question. I wish this wonderful workforce was reimbursed by our healthcare authority, which is our Washington Medicaid. They're not. They are in Oregon and they are in California. Washington State's been a relative laggard to recognize them as such a valuable workforce. There is lobbying efforts right now at the state level to recognize them as worthy of reimbursement, because they are saving lots of healthcare dollars when you think about diversion of keeping people out of the ED and the burden on EMS and all sorts of things. Again, one of my favorite stories is just a few weeks ago, we had one of our community health workers get called to the transit center, and it was one of his clients, and he was escalating, and this in a moment would have resulted in a police call and probably incarceration to the jail or transport to the ED unnecessarily. But because the transit center recognized that our community health worker was a trusted ally of this particular person, they called him, and it was the whole process, it was mediated with a Burger King Whopper. So the price of a Whopper kind of calmed things down. So they are not reimbursed or funded. So right now we are just funding them, through our providence as part of a risk avoidance. We do see this as a cost saving measure with hope that they would be eventually recognized in a Medicaid model.
Keep forgetting to unmute. All right. Oh, great question from Cindy Knight. Has there also been outreach to our community members with developmental disabilities? There have been concerns in our community regarding visitation policies for parents of adults with disabilities. Ooh, great question.
Yes, I remember. I remember Cindy. I've known her my whole life with those beautiful little braids. So if she could tell me more in regards to like COVID or hospital visitation, or maybe she can elaborate a little more, and I'd love to answer her question.
And speculate that that's what she means. Let's see. Maybe how community health workers can work with folks with developmental disabilities. But let's see. Yeah, have there been, while we're waiting for Cindy, if you add more stuff to the chat box, please do. But yeah, tell me about how population health is working with folks with developmental disabilities. And have you noticed anything around COVID and folks with disabilities?
Well, and I think I'm speaking to the choir here that there are, there's a high percentage of our people that are experiencing homeless that do have developmental disabilities, and it's a challenging front. We have had a patient that took advantage, and they're not patients when they're in their Southgate isolation quarantine shelter. We had a guest that was recently developmentally delayed, and we take care of them like we do anywhere else. And I would love to, I've talked to Cindy, I've had conversations with her in the past when I worked in the hospital in case management, but if she sees a need and an opportunity that we could grow or a partner, I'm always ready to take a phone call. So if that's a need, or if she has an idea, I'd love to hear about it, but nothing that I can call out specifically, but my mind is open.
And I love her comment here.
Yes, I think we need to talk.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. This is the time to get creative and to make sure we're not leaving anybody behind. All right. Oh, while I'm browsing for more questions, Dorothy is wondering if she saw you if she recognizes you as an AAUW scholarship awardee from a couple of years ago. Oh, humble nod.
Well, Dorothy, who do you think's paying for my school? Yes, of course. Yes. Yes. And I am very grateful. Thank you, AAUW. Thank you.
A question from Augusta Parks. If you could have any support tool that's not at your disposal right now, what would it be? Well, definitely that reimbursement for your community health folks, but what else? What other tools would you like to have at your disposal?
Oh, I think there's not a social ill that money can't fix. So I hate to be slowed down by money. I have all sorts of ideas, and it always comes down to the almighty dollar, doesn't it? But there's workaround. I don't know. That's it. Yeah, I don't want, I just wouldn't like not to be told by money. And I feel incredibly supported by Providence and incredibly supported by community. Yeah, it is unlimited funding and resources, and I would like 12 more community health workers and everybody to get along and everybody to be housed and everybody be vaccinated. That's all.
Well, we'll keep working on that.
Okay.
And we'll take your lead on this. Okay. Oh, I have a question about vaccine rollout. Is everyone going to get their vaccine through their physician, or is there going to be like a great walk-up clinic and I just walk by one day and I'm vaccinated? How are people going to
Magic. Yeah.
when
Well, and that's
move past health after? I know that we have all these vulnerable populations we take care of first, but when it's into the general public, do you know how that's going to happen?
that's part of the incident command decision making that's happening in partnership at that county level. Right now, that's what we've practiced for years. All of these drills that we've been doing, and probably unbeknownst to the public, that a yearly flu clinic that we operate one Saturday a year, that is operationalizing and really has been practiced for in the event that we've had this pandemic, that we've had to massively vaccinate people. It's been kind of our practice dry run. So there will be some sort of equivalent, probably multiple drive-through type of equivalents, whether it be at the fairgrounds. There's lots of ideas being tossed around. But more importantly, we know that, again, back to that health equity conversation, we can't have people just incumbent on coming to us. It's more about also going to the people. So there are people all throughout this county and all throughout surrounding counties that do not have the means or the transport to get to us. So it's really important, if we are seriously wanting to vaccinate and get herd immunity, that we need to get people out. So on my laser focus is getting out to continuing to go to First Fruits and Tyson Foods and all the places that we need to go to the people to ease their way in that regard.
Great idea.
But yes, there will be widespread community vaccination drive-throughs. Yes.
Very cool. Well, taking things to our food processing plants seems like an excellent idea. I'm so glad that you guys are busy being creative to come up with solutions for that really big problem. Okay, from Cindy, in addition to being grateful for you, she's wondering about how COVID tracing is going. She says it feels weak, but wonder if there's any way that we can encourage that, because it seems really important. We trace.
Yes. Yep. Contact tracing is getting more difficult. So why we have a care coordination contract with the county, we speak every day with our county. Contact tracing and case investigation has been in the jurisdiction of the health department. My population health department, as part of the COVID response, has been focused on symptom management, escalation. And by the way, we do send about one person a day to the emergency department that's not doing well at home. So it's really important to check on people while they're at home. So we do symptom management, symptom escalation process, lots and lots of COVID education. What is isolation? What is quarantine? When can you get out of it? Why is it important? Whereas the county really focuses on doing that contact tracing. So that is, again, the jurisdiction of the health department. As the numbers have exploded, our health department, is doing the best that they can. But at this point, we would probably need over 100 additional contact tracers. So again, there's a meeting of the minds occurring right now on how we can do better. What technology is available at our fingertips to help our health department? What's available at the Department of Health level? What can we do? How you can help that out is encouraging people that aren't feeling well to get tested and to stay at home. It always surprises me and discourages me when I call somebody who has tested, and you call and they answer their phone and they're at work. So this is serious. This is a contagious disease. We have widespread community. We have over a 15% positivity rate. This means you can pick it up at Walmart and at the gas station. You can pick it up anywhere. So please, please, please wear a mask and stay at home, and encourage people when they don't feel well, don't go to work. So I know it's hard, but I'm hopeful. We will get through this. We really will.
Well, there's one super action item. Brittany was eager for more tangible action items, things like how to volunteer and how to help with funding and big problems. Yeah. Any more ideas? I think providing a little bit of peer pressure and encouraging the people in your sphere of influence to be mindful of their health and the health of others is no small thing. I mean, I would, sometimes I'd rather give $25 to a charity than call my friends and tell them that I don't think they should go eat in that restaurant like they mentioned. That's real hard work. It might seem a little fluffy, but I think actually exerting that influence on our friends is actually it's valuable, and it's really hard.
I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And I don't know if it provides any comfort to anybody, but there are conversations. I mean, there's conversations happening tomorrow. We're trying to think of ways, even utilizing students like Whitman and other college students. What could we do? How can we rapidly utilize? We need resources. We need work. We need a workforce, right? We need people to help with this process. So I'm not saying the Calvary's coming and the answer is right around the corner, but by gosh, there's lots of wickedly smart people, way smarter than I am, coming together and trying to work through this. It is on everybody's mind.
No way. Is there any way to, speaking of money, that was one of Brittany's needs. Is there a way to help with funding? Is there somebody we need to write to for more funding, or how can we make money?
Funding for what? For what particular thing?
For community health.
Yeah. I think the most meaningful way is to have it follow your passion. So I've got a lot of my hands in different buckets, but what speaks to your heart? So I think about is behavioral health driving your passion? There's all sorts of behavioral health initiatives right now that, our Providence Foundation is taking money. There's all sorts of nonprofits taking money that need help right now. BMAC, I think about all the work they're doing, the Walla Homeless Alliance, we're about to enter a collaborative with them to do a mobile outreach clinic. Go where your passion is. What is the passion, and let the dollars follow. So if you need matchmaking to help find a cause, hit me up. I will find that person for you. I will find a place for you to deposit your money. And I'd be happy to have it be population health.
So there's ways to give to population health.
Absolutely. Our Providence Foundation is our fiscal, our financial donation. And we do use, I think that we have something called the Good Samaritan Fund, which is a lifesaver. Our need has gone up exponentially during COVID. You think about all the tangible items that aren't covered by insurances. This is pairs of shoes. This is groceries. It's Gatorade. It's a green bell pepper. We are delivering so many goods to people's doorsteps. I think we have bought 500 oximeters and 600 thermometers, just an absurd amount of goods. I mean, this is not billable. I mean, we're just giving them out to people who need them. And our foundation is the one to provide those endpoints. So our foundation has a population health fund. They have a Good Samaritan fund specifically for those patients' needs that aren't covered by other means.
I think that's a great question, Brittany. So that was a wonderful question. We got it out of her. There's a Good Samaritan fund with the Providence Foundation. That's a good place to put your money. In addition to pushing back against dehumanizing language and exerting as much social pressure as you can on others to be safe during this pandemic and to keep other people safe. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay, a great question from Corey about access for inpatient psychiatry in our community. So you're working with folks who often have unmet psychiatric needs. So tell us about how we might develop inpatient services here in our community.
Oh, it's so exciting. It really is. You know, as awful as is, we have a dismal access problem. I don't need to tell anybody that. We have community counselors with wait lists of 200. If you go and try to find a counselor right now, good luck. It is difficult. Even us on this end really have to poll and try back channels. It's tough out there, and in a time that we need it most. We know the sequelae from COVID. In the next 2 to 6 months, we're going to see astronomical mental health surges in depression and anxiety and deaths of despair. I can't build it fast enough. I can't get it here fast enough. But what I can tell you is we do have a plan like never before. And there's enough to go around. So we're not stealing anybody's cheese or land grabbing, but I want to be able to create a place where anybody can go within the Providence healthcare system and get their mental health care needs. There is not health without mental health. So we have a plan to integrate behavioral health into primary care. We are looking at grant opportunities to build out an urgent care, behavioral health urgent care. We have a new strategist that's very interested in building out an inpatient unit, both adolescent and geropsych. So I'm not promising anything, but we do have lots of buckets. We have a wonderful Blue Mountain Health Cooperative, which I want to pitch right now, that will be starting up in February. It will be housed in our population health building, but it's a relationship between Anchor Point Counseling and Walla University. It will be a student-run clinic where people can go and get free counseling for up to 2 to 6 to 12 sessions while they're waiting for a community counselor to open up. So this is a new day in Walla Walla. I called 2021 the year of behavioral health. I called 2020 the year of behavioral health, but I didn't anticipate a global pandemic. But 2021, things are different. Walla Walla Fire Department and paramedics are looking at maybe a paramedicine program where many of their calls are rooted in behavioral health concerns and anxiety. And do those calls really need to go to the emergency department? Can we, send a savvy social worker on those calls and do some in-field work? Again, it's all about innovative thinking and creative thinking. So as far as the inpatient psychiatry, our new strategist does have lots of ideas around that. So perhaps right now we have none. We have no psychiatry. So, but 2021.
Well, I know what I'll be asking for Christmas.
A psychiatrist?
Patient psychiatry for our Walla Walla Valley.
With a bow, yes.
Bow, yes. Or even no bow. I'd take it without a bow.
Okay.
Sorry for that great question. Well, lots of words of encouragement for you from the chat. Thank you, everybody. Joe, you've got your hand raised, but is there any way that you can, Joe or Carol, can you add it down here? While Joe or Carol writes their question in the chat box, if possible, Philmans, do you happen to know, Becky, if the vaccine will cost anything to the regular person?
I have no idea. Such a great question. Boy, did I sure get a rise when I saw the vaccinations roll out in Wales and Northern Ireland today. I was cheering for them. So I don't know. Great question.
Well, we'll find out. And
yeah.
we'll have to, if it's if some folks can't make the payment, we'll have to come up with other ways to make sure that everybody gets it, no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got some notes. Brittany suspects it will, or nearly positive that it won't cost anything. And then, of course, Pastor Julie swooping in to say, how can we help with that cost? And it might just be, I'm not sure which cost, but I'm assuming for vaccines here, Pastor Julie, and I bet there will be a way. Anyway, it falls into that creativity category and being agile and having to build the plane while we fly it. So thank you so much for all of the ways that you're doing that, Becky. Thank you so much. Any closing words for the good people who have joined us here tonight?
Just be kind, and I thank you. I am so blessed to live in a community that is so incredibly supportive of not only population health, but just all the nonprofits. And I love to come to work every day, and I love working with the people that I work with and the patients I work with, and I'm incredibly hopeful. As dark as it feels, I'm incredibly hopeful, and I hope that you go to bed tonight feeling a little hope as well.
We do. We certainly need it. And thank you for sharing your hopeful vision with us tonight. And thank you, friends, for being with us. That gives us hope, too, that we've got this loving community that's gathered to learn about how we can become a healthier community and to care for what's happening with the most vulnerable during this time of pandemic. Thank you, Becky, and thank you, Zidane. And thank you, community, for showing up tonight. We'll see you again, hopefully next month. We have our second Tuesday booked for another community conversation. We're hoping to talk about life after prison is our goal for next month. So join us again then, and you can find this information on Facebook and on our website. And if you want to find more about what Becky's doing, Becky, do you have a website or a Facebook page that we can visit to learn more about population health?
No, but I'm going to have my friend Brittany Mitchell work on that. She said, ha, ha, ha. I will, how about Liv, if I could you send my email out to your somehow group, or would that be appropriate?
I can send out your email right now.
Okay.
Oh, are you ready for this? Okay. Friends, what a generous offer. So I'm going to put it here in the chat window. If you don't have your chat window open it up so that you can grab this email here. And yes, we'll put it in our church connector in case anyone has questions, ideas, wants to collaborate. Thank you, Becky, for that generous offer. All right.
Thank you. Yes.
Well,
thank you. God bless you all. I really enjoyed this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time, community. We'll see you next month. All right. Have a good night. Be safe.